Welcome to Dalma Makes. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this candle jar. The jar or tin comes from this candle making kit, and there's 6 of them in total, and I have made a video about each. This is number 2. To prep the jar, I first sanded it as it's quite a sleek surface and I want things to stick to it quite well. This jar, I wanted to have some floral elements. So first of all, I'm separating some silk leaves from its stem and trying them on to see how they would look like on the jar. And at this point, I had a pretty good vision. But I wanted a lot more texture than just sticking on the leaves. So what I'm going to do is wrap some yarn on the entire surface of the jar and the lid. This is quite tedious, but it's worth the effort in my opinion. I just carefully laid down a little bit of glue and wrapped the yarn around and around and around until the entire surface was covered. I left the bottom uncovered so that it has a flat, stable surface to sit on. And then I did the same with the lid. I just dressed it up in a very, very long spiral of this yarn. The color of the yarn doesn't matter at this point. I know everything will be painted. After all that yarn wrapping, it's time for the first coat of paint. I'm using some nice cerulean blue and putting on a very generous amount, trying to soak it into the fibers of the yarn I just wrapped. This eats up a lot of paint, but I'm using craft paint for the first few layers. Bottom, I decided that stippling on the paint in like a thick layer would probably make it an interesting texture. I think I did about 2 or 3 coats of this blue paint overall, of course letting it dry in between. And that's what it looks like when it's fully dry. So now to the actual coloring. I'm going in with some distress paint in Blue Lagoon, I believe. It's this really nice blue, and I'm using my finger as a brush again. I really like the effect it has with only touching the raised surfaces and not getting into the recesses at all. And I go back to my silk leaves. Obviously, I don't want them in this cream color. I want them looking something like that. So I'm going to base coat them in a dark green first and leave them to dry. These are the other floral elements I'm gonna use from my stash. Those tri-leaf pieces actually had a very frayed edge, so I'm just using a lighter to quickly melt the edges to stop it from fraying further. And I'm of course base coating them in the same green as I did the leaves. The flowers, however, I'm just going to lightly dry brush with some yellow. Meanwhile, I'm jumping back to the jar, which has dried at this point, and I've realized that it's still quite fibrous, and I really didn't want it to shed. So I'm using some yellow shellac ink, and I'm using it as a varnish to seal in all those fibers, and it also changed the color of the jar. When that's finally dry, I'm going to use some shimmery gold paint to dry brush with my finger all over. This golden metallic paint is what unifies all 6 of the jars in the series. That and being very textured. Going back to the leaves that dried now, I'm going to use a light green paint, and I'm using the same technique with my finger, only touching the raised edges, and I think that makes them look a little bit realistic and dimensional. Of course, I'm adding a little bit of gold to the flowers and the leaves as well. And now it's time to unite the jar with the decorative elements. And to attach the leaves, I'm going to use more hot glue. I'm basically placing the leaves in a pattern that's gonna make them evenly distributed. First 4, and then filling in the gap between each 2 next to each other. And that way they look pretty even. On the lid, however, is going to be the largest decorative element. So I'm first gluing down some leaves, and then deciding on the arrangement of the roses and the other pieces of foliage, trying to make an aesthetically pleasing cluster. And with that, the decoration part is finished. This is a very tactile experience, holding this jar in your hands, and I think it will even insulate very well from the heat of a burning candle. That said, the candle making is also part of this project. I just followed the instructions included with the kit and made a lovely scented yellow colored wax to match the flowers on top. Of course, after leaving it to set with its siblings, it is ready. This is definitely one of my favorites out of the 6. I just really like the texture and the floral elements on top. If you watched the other videos in the series of candle jars, do let me know in the comments which one is your favorite. In any case, thank you for watching. I hope you're having a nice day. Bye!